A warm welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle podcast. And for the first time, we're going to shine the light on an era of Notts County's history that was probably not one of our most illustrious, but nothing, of course, to do with our guest today, but record period of administration in Football League history. Tough times, and there was a young lad starting to make his way in his game who joins us today. He went on to make over 100 appearances for Notts County. A very warm welcome to Kevin Nicholson.
Hello there. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Hey, delighted to have you. Delighted we've got the right Kevin Nicholson, because I hear there are two, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. I noticed you're looking at one or two of my shirts here. You presumably remember wearing a few of these.
I do. The one that you've on, I pretty much remember. I remember that shirt there reminds me of Stu Garden and potentially Steve Mildenhall. That's about that era, I believe.
Yeah. Then there's a black and white one in the background, and I think he ended up going to Scarborough with you, but it probably wasn't one of his greatest career moves coming to Notts. Tony Hackworth.
I speak to Tony and his missus every now and then. They're still up in Scarborough. He ended up staying there and played there for quite some time on and off and as captain. But yeah, we both went there on loan for the first time. We kind of got picked up by Gary Mills and sent away in shame. And we had a good time up there. We scored a few goals. Even I scored a few goals up there. And I ended up there for a couple of years after my time at Notts. And like I say, Hacky was up there for quite some time. So.
Now, we're gonna start off with a little quiz question today. Put you on the spot, and we've not rehearsed this, or I've not given you the answer anyway. So, you recognise the shirt. Your signature's on here somewhere. Proper player shirt, got the badges on. So it's got number 2 on the back. So all the people watching it, join in. Who's the number 2 shirt? What's the name of the player that used to wear this shirt?
The 3 players come to mind. So Rich Holmes, who was right back when I first got there as a young lad. Michael Brough, holding midfield player who I'm still good friends with to this day. But I'm pretty sure that it's Nick Fenton.
Okay, we'll do a reveal. Don't know what you think at home. Here's the reveal. So. Yes. Spot on.
Thank you. I know my stuff. So again, I used to live in the same. I had a flat on the canal in Nottingham when I was playing there, and Nicky Fenton used to live in the same block. He's now physio at Burton Albion, and every summer up until the last few, I kind of went back up north because I'm based in Torquay and have been for the last kind of 13 years, and we used to have a game of golf. And he's a very, very angry golf player. The same as he was quite an angry player at times. So he's calmed down a little bit now, but yeah, Fen is a good lad.
So whereabouts did you say you lived in Nottingham by Canal?
Yeah, so a place called Duke's Wharf, just by the canal and on the walk into Nottingham city centre near the. Well, I don't know if I'd know Nottingham if I saw it now, but that's what it used to be. So
was that near the big Sainsbury's Castle, the
yes.
Marina Wharf?
Yeah, you could walk down there. Yeah.
Big players home when they moved to Notts. Tommy Johnson got his first place there.
Okay.
When Tommy first came down from Newcastle, signed pro terms at Notts, and he bought a little flat apartment just there.
Yeah, I loved living in Nottingham. It was wasted on me because I was never into kind of going out and nights out and that kind of thing. But in terms of, it was my first experience of living alone and really kind of branching out and finding myself as such. And I absolutely love living there.
Hey, should a Derby lad be admitting they loved living in Nottingham?
You know what though? I left Derby. I left living in Derby when I was 14. So I love Derby. I live in a little village called Michelova, and it's a beautiful place. Love being there, but I don't remember it. Like I've lived away for so long and did at such a young age that I'm just a bit of a nomad. I've had a fortunate experience, I suppose. Most of the places I've lived have been really quite good fun.
You mentioned Michelova. Bit of trivia, because they spent quite a bit of money on their local village team. And a Notts County legend, there's actually, believe it or not, I don't know if you know the story, there's a game, there's a match that's named after him, a day, Sir Charlie Palmer Day. ex-Watford at Notts, and Charlie scored the winning goal when Notts beat Nottingham Forest in Jurassic era, maybe a few years after you, when they played him in League Two, when Peter Reid was playing for Notts, believe it or not, and Stan Collymore was playing for Forest, Roy Keane. Notts won 2-1. Charlie scored the goal. There's a day named after him in his honour, and he's running it at Mickleover now. They spent quite a bit of money.
They have, yeah. I've never managed to get to actually watch a game there because I was playing up until like 18 months ago, really. And then my current role at Exeter as the head of coaching means that I need an extra day in the week, never mind being able to go up to Mickleover and watch a game. But I know, I believe John McGrath is still the manager there. Some of my kind of really old schoolboy friends were playing there early on, and then they became a little bit more professional. And one or two of the guys that I crossed paths with, Ricky Ravenhill went there for a bit. I know Pablo Mills was there, and a few of those guys. So yeah, it's a nice little setup just down the road from where I live, and yeah, I hope to one day go and watch a game there.
Now, we were chatting just very briefly beforehand, and one thing I hadn't realised was that you were in that group of years when the FA had their kind of finishing school, whatever you want to call it, for when kids were taken out of professional football clubs and put into the live-in premises at Lillishall. And they were kind of the creme de la creme, weren't they, that went there? And you were one of the alumni, yeah?
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough. I mean, admittedly, I was about the same size as I am now when I was 12. So I was pretty dominant as a schoolboy player, centre midfield player at the time. And yeah, you have to go through a long trial period where you do local trials, regional trials, national trials, and I got through all of those. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the 16 that was picked. I graduated in 97, so I was there for 95, 96, 97. And yeah, I mean, it essentially Lillishall was the blueprint for what academies are now. So Howard Wilkinson, a couple of other guys, they kind of took the blueprint of Lillishall and felt that it would make sense that every football club, every football league and Premier League football club had a model like that because it was regularly producing top players. I mean, the reality is, even with those guys, we were the 16 best players in the country at the time. And by the time we got to 20, there was probably half a dozen of us left in the game. So the actual statistics of players making it obviously are absolutely tiny. But it was an amazing 2 years. You know, my year was Scott Parker, Alan Smith was there for a little while, Francis Jeffers, Stuart Taylor, the goalkeeper that was at Arsenal for a little while. But other than those guys and a couple of others, most of them, you know, didn't really quite make it, and it's kind of scary when you look back.
So presumably at that point as well, you would have been clocking up England under 16, England under 17, England under 18 caps, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough. I was England under 15 and under 16 captain. So I played in what they still play it now, the Victory Shield. So we won the Victory Shield at under 15 age. Under 16, like some incredible experiences. We went over and played Brazil in Brazil, which was absolutely incredible. I use this whenever I'm talking to the young players at the academy now, and I'm trying to give it the big one and make out, because they've got no idea about my time playing or anything like that. So when I'm trying to tell them that, you know, I know what I'm on about, we played Brazil in Brazil and Ronaldinho was playing for them. So when you get asked, when you do things like this, or you do like you know, player quizzes and things, and someone says who's the best you've ever played against, it's an absolute name-dropping dream that I get to pull that one out of the bag every now and then. But he was incredible there, and I'd love to tell the story about how I marked him out the game, and we dominated, but we got absolutely spanked 4-2, and he got 3.
Did he have the hair and the teeth?
He certainly did. He had the ability as well, yeah. But I had hair back then, so there's quite a lot changed. So.
Okay, so Lillishall must have been a fantastic achievement for you. But as you alluded to, although it was incredibly hard to get into, for whatever reason, it wasn't a guarantee that you would then have a fantastic, in terms of longevity, career in the game. Yeah, what would you put that down to?
I think there's so much that changes in those developing years for footballers. I mean, like I say, I was the classic early developer. So Lillishall in the earlier years before me would generally pick the best players. And the best
Yeah.
players were
Yeah.
generally so if you look in football, the vast majority of footballers' birthdays fall between September and November
I've read about this.
It's like we now in academies talk about Q1 birthdays, Q2, Q3, and Q4, because essentially I could have been the best part of a year older than most of the kids I was playing against, which at 13, 14, 15 can make a huge, huge difference. I mean, I was shaving at Lilleshall. There were other lads that you know had not really hit puberty yet, so there was a real difference in the physicality. And Lilleshall used to pick the biggest, strongest, best at the time. And as happened with me, you're totally dominant all the way through your youth career. And then you get to 18 and 19, and all of a sudden, people are starting to look down on you. And that strength advantage that you had, that pace advantage that you had, all those kind of early developing advantages have completely gone out the window. So if you haven't got yourself up to speed technically, if you're not tactically able to do it, and as I found, not only was I an early developer in terms of I was always the biggest, quickest, strongest, when everybody matured, I was actually one of the slowest. So I really had to fight to find my way. And I ended up like as a left back because of it. I was kind of back then, the traditional build and size of a left back, and my left foot lent itself to, you know, deliveries down the line and playing the ball forward, and set plays was always my thing throughout my career. But yeah, what you found is a lot of those early developers had fallen out the game because they couldn't adapt to not being able to do things physically that they could before. You had to be a proper footballer. You had to be able to do that. And physio at Lilleshall was really quick on it. You know, we walked in the door and he looked at me and he went, "You better learn how to play, because if you don't, 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to have a real surprise." And I took it on board. I still thought, yeah, all right, because I kind of thought I was going to be about 6'2" and an absolute machine. And I met my missus at 18, and I was still telling her I was going to be 6'2" at that point, but it never quite happened. So it is a shock to players. And along with that, you know, other interests come about. They find drink, they find nights out, they find women, they find distractions, they find all these things that can take away from what you actually really need to commit to become a successful footballer. And making it is one thing, signing as a professional, that's one thing. It's hard and people should be proud when they get there. But I was told really early on that making it's the easy part, staying in it becomes the hard part. And I did. I mean, I ended up at Notts. I thought I was going on and playing in the Premier League and I was going to be this, you know, real successful multi-millionaire player. And I was at 20, I left Sheffield Wednesday by mutual consent and signed non-contract terms at Northampton, which essentially, at that point, I thought I was going out the game. I went on trial at Hearts, and ironically, I was told that I wasn't big enough after all those years of it being a super strength. And then I ended up at Northampton on non-contract terms. I signed for Forest Green and Northampton at the same time. You can dual register with a football league club and a non-league club.
Could you? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, Nigel Spink, you remember the Aston Villa goalkeeper?
Big keeper.
Yeah, he was goalkeeping coach at Northampton, but he was also joint manager of Forest Green, along with I think it was Steve Norton. He used to play at Notts County as well.
David Norton.
Yeah,
He runs an academy with Mark Draper.
He passed away a few years ago. If it's the one
no, it must be a different one then. Must be a different one.
But he, Nigel Spink was there, and he got me playing. I played 2 games for Forest Green, well, and then Kev Wilson, who was manager of the Northampton side at the time.
Yeah, ex-Notts.
Yeah. He's a good guy, Willow. He's still knocking about now. He pulled me back, and I made my kind of debut coming off the bench against Luton in League One. And then I made my starting debut against Notts County, which was where Jockey Scott, who was the manager at the time, spotted me. I did have a really good game. I was playing wing back in a 3-5-2, and although we got beat 2-0 or 2-1, I did play particularly well on that day. And because you were non-contract, they can put 7 days notice in and get you for free. So I got a phone call. They put their 7 days notice in, and then I kind of spoke with Northampton because I was really grateful for the opportunity and thought I'd probably end up staying. But I came and met the people at Notts, and it was just what seemed like too big an opportunity at the time, you know, that was all going in the right direction until it abruptly stopped, as you mentioned in the bit before. So but yeah, it worked out really, really well. And there you go. I find myself at Notts County in League One and feeling like I'm on my way up again.
Yeah. First thing, I just want to, you've now explained why I never made it in the game beyond Retford Town Reserves in the Midland League, because I was born on July the 2nd. So I had no chance, did I?
There you go.
The worst possible
if you were,
quarter.
Unfortunately for you, if it was happened nowadays, they would take that into account. So people are really aware of all that now, and they give people a lot longer, and they understand growth and maturation and all that kind of thing now. These academies are really clued on with everything. But back in those days, there were a lot of players that got told they weren't big enough and ended up at 6'4".
Okay, you've led us. Great chat. Great, very interesting. So, you've come to Notts County. So, as you've mentioned, you were at Lilleshall, one of the top 16 in your age bracket in the country. You've ended up 16 miles down the road from your hometown. You bought your first little place by Castle Marina, by the river. There was I think it's fair to say, a bit of a time for false dawn at Notts at that point. A lot of things had happened, Derek Pavis, and I'm not quite sure who owned the club when you bought it, but was this the Albert Scardino, we're going to conquer the world routine?
It was, yes. Hence, what a fantastic opportunity to sign for. We had a new training ground come in, and we had all kinds of stuff that seemed almost too good to be true. And you know what they say about that, don't you?
Yeah. Now, looking at it, and I'm on the other end of a Zoom call. So, your first 9 games for Notts at the end of the season, you scored 2 goals. In your next 96, you got 1. What happened?
Hold on, let me think about that one. First of all, I'm just fact checking in my head that that's right. I scored the header against Peterborough on my debut.
Correct. 3-3.
Yeah, great game. And Andy Hughes delivered the cross, and I came in at the back post with a heder.
Well, you were 6'4". You did all right there, didn't you?
I got in front of my man because I couldn't out jump him. Let's put it that way. I kind of came in as a left winger.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I came in as a left winger. So I was playing higher up the pitch to start with. But yeah,
about 4 games later.
I think you're wrong there. I scored more than that because I remember the worst miss of my life ever happened. I think it was Bury at home or Tranmere at home, someone like that. And it was 1-0 to us, and this was when Billy Dearden was manager, and we broke with about 10 minutes to go, and I broke down the middle of the pitch, and Ian Barraclough broke on the counter-attack because they were pressing, and he broke with the ball down the right-hand side, and both of us kind of in on the goalkeeper, and he squared it for me, and 3 yards out, and I will say, if he's watching, he should have put it on my left, and he put it just behind me on my right foot, which was wooden, to say the least, and I hooked it around the post from about 3 yards. And I just wanted the ground to open up. It was the first experience I've had of an absolute glaring miss, because most of my chances were kind of half chances. And it was painful. And I went in, and the lads tried, they thought it was hilarious because we ended up winning. So Billy Dearden came in shaking his head and kind of trying not to laugh at me. The lads were absolutely in tears at how bad a miss it was. It was kind of one of those taxi moments on Soccer AM. And then the following week, we played somebody in the FA Cup, and we won 7-2, and I scored a header in that game as well. And in that one, I went crazy. I mean, it was ridiculous to celebrate when you're 5-2 up and you're pretty much through. They were like a non-league team. But I just remember the feeling of absolute relief that I'd actually scored and felt like I'd made up for my miss the week before. But with that and the goal against Huddersfield, and I scored against Bristol City, so I'm already ahead of you here.
I'm going to blame my son or Wikipedia.
Yeah, you need to get better staff.
Yeah, I need a better stats man, don't I? Need a better stats man. But I was going to say, you scored, so you came as, effectively, in that first 2 months of the season, because you came in March towards the end of that season, you came as a free-scoring winger because Peterborough 3-3, and you scored when we beat Bristol City 2-1, I think, if my stats are correct, which they probably aren't. But then gradually you were sort of, I don't know whether the word's converted or whatever, you moved back down the left wing a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, so I ended up at left back. So I played all of my kind of Lillishall career and England youth career as a left back, and I was at Sheffield Wednesday as a left back. But when I had my really good game against you for Northampton, I was playing wing back. So, and a lot of the good stuff I did was attacking, because I wasn't quick, I wasn't big, but I had good delivery, and so I was putting crosses in. And Northampton had a guy called Steve Howard up front.
Oh, big lad, went to Derby and Leicester.
That's it, yeah. And obviously I was encouraged to get balls in the box. So Northampton had a really good team. Marco Gabbiadini, Steve Howard, Jamie Forrester. They had some really good players. And that was where Rocky Scott had seen me and seen the best of me. So when I went in, he saw me as a winger, and then I just wasn't quick enough to get past anybody. So it eventually was like, well, you've got good delivery, you're not really getting past anybody. So I think, was it Gary Neville that said that most fullbacks are frustrated centre halves or wingers, and there you go. So I ended up back there, but it suited my skill set way more. I was way better at playing with the game in front of me, and my kind of vision and delivery was put to better use like that than it was trying to go past people, because I was never had a trick and wasn't quick, so it didn't really marry up very well.
Here's a question for you, because I do remember you, unlike my son. Quality left peg. Put it on a sixpence anywhere you want. Whip the ball in, outswinger from the goal, centre forwards coming, all of that. My son's a lefty as well. Why are all left-footed players invariably so one-footed?
Yeah, you know what? We talk about it a lot, but I don't know if I've got an answer. Left footers tend to look smooth. They look kind of majestic. The term wand is often used if you've got a good left foot and all that. You have all of that stuff, but often your right foot is for standing on and standing on alone. Whereas right footers tend to not quite have the same kind of smoothness or the same look when they're striking the ball, but they tend to have left foot that could actually do half a job. Again, that's maybe going back. I mean, nowadays, academies and youth football, they are encouraged so much to practice with both feet. It was never that big a deal when I was coming through. Even then, although it was development football, it was still almost results based. When I was 17, I was practicing my right foot at Sheffield Wednesday. I was out after training and I was kicking the ball against the wall. Really simple practice, just trying to get used to striking the ball on my right foot. And the assistant manager came out and he went, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working on my weakness." He said, "Your weakness isn't going to get you in the first team." And then walked away. And that, for all of the coaching sessions I've had and for all the football conversations I've had, little things like that stick with you most. Because I kind of went away and thought, well, at this stage, my right foot's not going to be football league level. But if I can clear a ball, if I can side foot it 10 yards to the next person, and if I can just awkwardly get the ball out of an area with it, then actually, he's got a point. But it's been on my mind throughout my career. It's one of those conversations that's always stuck with me because it was so blunt and almost like, well, if you're going to practice extra, make your strength your super strength, because that's what's going to win us games. That's what's going to get you in the team. That's what's going to make you successful. Now, you wouldn't hear that in youth football. All the way from 7, 8 and 9, all the way through, you'll be working on your weak foot. You'll be working on your strong foot. You'll be, working on your those areas that they see as a weakness. Or we have ILPs, individual learning plans at Exeter, so they will work on specifically what the coach has highlighted that they need to get better at. But it was a very different game back then.
So you've come to Notts. You're thinking this is the renaissance. You're going to launch back up. I'm not saying there were some decent players, other than yourself, obviously. Was Danny Allsop around, or did he join in the summer after you came? Because he banged a lot of goals.
Danny was there before. So right. I mean, we had Craig Island centre half, Nicky Fenton centre half, both really good players. When I first got there, Wardy was in goal, who was outstanding. And then when he left, Steve Mildenhall came in, who was a very, very good goalkeeper. We had Darren Caskey in midfield, who was just exceptionally gifted. His lifestyle didn't lend itself to be as successful as what he could have been. because you don't get many players with the level of ability that guy had. You talk about 2-footed, he could play off either foot, his range of passing was brilliant, you couldn't get the ball off him in training, he was an outstanding footballer, but enjoyed one or two other things as much as he enjoyed football, which maybe took away from where he could have got to. We have Mark Stallard, who I speak to regularly now, and Danny Allsop, who's back in Australia, but we've stayed in touch. Marcel Cass, right winger, one of the quickest players I've ever seen. I mean, we did have some really, really good. Ian Barraclough, Ian Barraclough was kind of looked like he was coming to the end of his career. He signed as a left back. At the same time, I was there as a left winger, and he kind of ended up being converted into a midfield player because his legs had gone a bit at left back, and that's where I dropped in. Ian Richardson, Rico would. I see it's his birthday today. I think I saw.
It is very good.
Yeah. I mean, top guy, absolute warrior, run through a wall, head it, kick it, all that kind of stuff. Used to do my head in that he got ahead of me at left back now and then, but other than that, really, really, top guy. So on paper, we had a fantastic team, but I think with most things, when you've got so much turmoil going on off the pitch, it can distract from what we should have been concentrating on. And unfortunately, over that time, it did.
So we're talking here that Albert Scardino came in with Peter Storey. There were a lot of bold plans to, promote the club worldwide, develop this, do that. There were some players, I think, that were paid quite good money to come to the club, and the club kind of went for it. But it didn't, results-wise, it didn't really take off at all, did it?
I don't know how quickly we went into admin from when I was there, but I remember the first pre-season, I signed in the new year. So yep. I signed in kind of January, February time and saw that season out. And then the following season, we went on a pre-season tour to Italy. And It was stunning, like lovely, beautiful place. I can't remember the area of Italy it was, but beautiful place. Up in the mountains somewhere. We played a few games out there, had a bit of a tournament type thing. And we were sat in this stunning venue, having a coffee. Albert Scardino was there. And he was telling us about the plans that he had, and that, we're going to have a new training ground. We're going to get these players in. It's going to be the place to be. We're going up the league. This is what we're going to do. And, you sat there and there was a waterfall. It was that kind of picturesque. It was like a dream. You sat at this little kind of, in the middle of the Italian mountains, looking at this waterfall, talking to this American guy who was really well spoken, really put it across well. It's like, this is incredible. You've signed Darren Taskey, you've signed Tony Hackworth, you've got Mark Stallard there already, you've just signed a new deal just to come off the back of a great season. You've got all this stuff and you're like, this is going to be incredible. And then I'm pretty sure within about 2 months of that we were in admin and we weren't getting paid on time. We weren't getting paid what we said we were going to get paid. We were training at, I can't remember the name of it now, something farm. But
Grove Farm.
Is it Grove Farm?
Grove Farm, University Land. It's that bad. I play Sunday mornings on there.
Yeah, well, it was like that then. But we were training around there, so we were getting changed at the ground and driving around. And I mean, it didn't mean anything to me. I was quite happy to be playing. It was just nice to be involved and part of a first team. It was my first real being a first team regular experience. I'd been the young boy at Sheffield Wednesday. So it was being part of a first team squad for me. So it was probably a different outlook. But the fact is that when people aren't getting paid, when people don't know if the contract's going to be honoured, when people don't know about administration, when people don't know where you're going to train from day to day, because we didn't always train there. Sometimes we had to go other places. It is a big distraction, and it was such a shame because it was sold to us on a very different brochure as to what we turned up for, really.
If I remember correctly, as you said, at that pre-season training camp in Italy, lots of bold plans. The stadium was going to be named after some local estate agent, Aaron Scargill or something. And he was going to be the sponsor on the shirts. He did a runner, or his company went bust or something. And like you say, unravelled very, very quickly. And then the club is in administration and was to spend, at that time, a record period in administration of any football club ever. So it was 18 months with an administrator. Paul Finnerty rings a bell. So you're a younger player, but presumably you'd have to get a mortgage for your place and all the rest of it. I mean, what was it like? Did you end up washing your own kit? I mean, were wages really late? Did you have to do deferrals, PFA? What was it actually like?
Yeah, we were washing our own kit for a bit, but again, so what? You're a footballer. It was not really that big a deal. Just wash your kit and go on with it. It I think it was the uncertainty that was the biggest distraction of it. We didn't get paid on time a lot. We didn't get paid, generally speaking, League One footballer, you'll have a wage, you'll have an appearance money, you'll have some kind of bonus depending on what position you play or how good your agent was maybe when you were negotiating. You didn't get any of those bonuses. I had a contract that says that I got a bonus after 20 appearances, a bonus after 40, and after 50 appearances, I got to renegotiate my contract. And I got to 50 appearances really quickly. I got through, within kind of a season and a half.
Yeah.
What I learned then was that you've got to be really careful how you word things in a contract. And my agent should have done this better, I think. But a renegotiation can be, excuse me, sir, I've played 50 games. Can I have a new contract, please? No. Technically, that's a negotiation.
Yeah.
I just didn't actually get anything. So my new contract, which I thought was nailed on, didn't come about. But again, I signed three and a bit year contract, so I still had 2 years left on it. It was just, I think things become a little bit acidic almost. The banter in the dressing room often becomes about woe is me, like, oh my God, another month where we've not been paid. And often it was in good humour because we were getting paid eventually. People weren't losing houses. They weren't falling short on paying mortgages. We were just getting there. It was the uncertainty of will we get it this month, and will we get those bonuses, and will we get what we need? And so it just started to grind. I didn't realise until I spoke to you about it being a record time in administration. It does feel like my whole time at Notts County was in administration. Like when I think back, it's the first thing, along with the goal I scored against Huddersfield. It's in the top three things you think about is we were just in administration the whole time. But usually you just on with it with a bit of humour. You have that kind of siege mentality, and it got us out of a few scrapes. It got us out of relegation that year when I scored in the last game. It looked like it was going to get us out of it, even the following year, and eventually it just caught us up. And knowing what I know now, and it's the easy thing to say in retrospect, we as a dressing room should have got together more and just said, look, we can't control the stuff that's going on around here. We just need to make sure that this is right and we do this and we're all together. And that was the manager's job. And I played under Jockey Scott was really quite a good manager, old school. I got a hairdryer treatment off him away at Mansfield that goes down as one of the most epic player destructions I think I've ever been witness to, and it was me. Well, I think it was in the cup early in my first full season, and we went 3-0 up before half time. And just before half time, I've gone to clear a ball and I've kicked the floor first. And I've actually hurt my ankle doing it. The ball's gone to their lad. He's had a shot and it's gone in. And we came in at half time 3-1 up, but obviously it's that 3-0 at half time. That's a tough comeback, isn't it? 3-1, they've just scored. So you know where his head's at, but he's come in and he's got there. And when people get angry and the spit starts to come out the thigh, and I can see lads behind and they're starting to chuckle, because I got destroyed for a good 2 minutes. So their shoulders are starting to go behind me. And I was only a young lad. I was 20, like 21. I'm there, and what are you going to say? You're not going to say, I'm sorry, I miskicked it. You just take what's coming to you. So I sat there, and he absolutely destroyed me in front of the dressing room. And we went on to win the game. But it's another one of those things in the dressing room on the way home. And even now, when you speak to some of the lads, they'll talk about it. It was one of those moments where I just got battered. He was genuine, like he would do that, and then that would be it. He wouldn't hold it against you. There wouldn't be anything later down the line. It's just, look, this is what I feel. You're going to know what I feel. You're not going to do it again, but I'm not going to hold a grudge. And he was, nowadays with young players, you don't get that so much. Young players now, if you're in the face and you try and kind of rule by fear, which Jockey did from time to time, you get a very different reaction to what you did back in those days. but yeah, Jockey Scott, then Billy Dearden came in. There was a couple of interim periods with Gary Brazil, but Billy Dearden came in. Billy Dearden was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in football. He was like your granddad taking your team. He was absolutely brilliant. You'd have done anything for him. He was that kind of guy. And then, you know, we kind of stayed up, and then he started the next season not great, and he went, and Gary Mills came in, and Gary Mills, when he first came in, like, we thought, this guy, he's on it. You know, he got everyone together. It looked like he really was focused. He looked like his team spirit building was going to be a strength. And then when things didn't go quite right, he really showed his teeth, and it got a bit nasty. And particularly for me, he took a dislike for me, which again, that's a manager's prerogative. You're not going to. That's the beauty of football, is it's about opinions. But it was at that point that I kind of, myself, Tony Hackworth, and a couple of others got sent training on our own, and those kind of things that you hear about. And then we were out, but they got relegated that year, and that was the one thing that I was disappointed about, was that I never felt like I got a chance to really fight for us to stay up, because I was out for the last 2 months of the season, and it progressively got worse, and they got relegated. And in some ways, it was probably a mercy, because I didn't feel that, you know, I've been relegated before, or I've been relegated since, should I say, and it was deeply, deeply upsetting. It was deeply personal to me that the team had gone down. I'd given it everything with my teammates, and we hadn't been good enough, and it really, really hurt. But at Notts, if I'm being absolutely honest, I didn't feel anything, because I'd been sent to the side so much, and I'd been sent up to Scarborough, and he wouldn't really talk to me, and all those kind of things. And so I didn't feel the emotion that I would have done. And it feels a bit sad that I didn't get a chance to really give it a go and try and stay up, and be a part of it. But it is football. And I've come across Gary Mills a few times since. I've played against him, and I've managed against him. And he's absolutely fine when I talk to him. In fact, I doubt he would even recollect that he did that, because that's just the life of a manager. And for me, it was a career-defining, massive, massive moment. For a manager, it's just a player that you need out your face. And he chose to do it that way, which I don't agree with, and I was upset about. But, you know, he lives and dies by that.
Very interesting, because I was at Leicester for 15 years. And I have to say, in terms of what you might, as a footballer, as a model pro, Gary was kind of one of those players, you know.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but equally, I have seen players when they become managers. You would probably understand this from your time at Torquay. The huge pressures that managers are put under, and the way that sometimes their characters can crumble or become, you know, very, very, very pressurized, and they become almost different people to the person you remember walking in the door at the press conference saying, I'm the new manager, everyone's happy, we're great. And a year later, they can be completely different people. They leave, and you see them a year later when they're not in management, and they're like they were when they walked through the door again. So, and you would know from, because you went through the mill at Torquay, didn't you, clearly? I mean, incredibly highly pressurized role.
It is. It is. I mean, I've heard other managers talk about it. It's perceived pressure. The worst that can happen is you can get sacked. You're not getting shot at. You're not on the front line. You can get sacked. The fact is that as footballers, particularly those of us that have been in the game as long as what we have, you tend to define yourself by what you do a bit, and you really shouldn't. And I know I shouldn't. But I only stopped playing 18 months ago, and I've gone through that little wobble that a lot of ex-players do, where I'm no longer Kev Nicholson, the footballer, and it hits you a little bit. I no longer get ready for a Saturday to go out and have people cheer my name or boo me or whatever else it might be. I don't have that buzz anymore. I don't have that routine that you have. So I think when you go into management, it's that next best thing. I mean, I love management. I probably enjoyed managing more than I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed coaching more than I enjoyed playing, because I felt playing is quite a selfish way of life. You're a part of a team. You always want to do the best for your team, but actually you want your place in that team, and you want that next contract. It's your livelihood. It's your life. As a manager, you're trying to build something in your image. You're trying to build something that, you know, plays in a way that you're proud of, because you know the fans will then be proud of, and you want that. There's a bit of ego involved. You want your fan base to be behind you. You want them to recognize that your team is playing for you and for them. And when things start to go wrong, it could be easy to turn. It could be easy to turn on your players. And the one thing I kind of promised myself when I went into it was the one thing I wouldn't do. Like I would treat everybody fairly. I would treat everybody properly. Even if I was going to get rid of them, I would make sure that I gave them everything I could and that I would be open and honest with them as they did it. But again, it's a generation thing. Go back 15, 20 years and Gary Mills played for Cloughy, didn't he? So Gary Mills would have seen things and how Cloughy did stuff, and it was very, even more cutthroat, I think, back then. You know, it's you take those things on board, you take it from your managers. So after what happened at Notts, I would never, ever send anybody to go and train on their own. Like I would want to get rid of players at times because you can get a bad egg that can upset everything and turn everything else against you. But I still vowed that I'd treat those guys right and try and get them out the right way. Not always easy, because often with those guys, they don't share your sense of compassion or trying to do things the right way. But yeah, I can totally see. My wife says that I looked a lot older when I was managing than I do now, and I didn't think it at the time. But you know, at some point in the future, I'll be going back into it. I've no doubt about that. But it'd be interesting what I do different and how I handle it. But in terms of pressure, I think it was Mourinho that said it. There's no, it's not real pressure, is it? It's just it's a job at the end of the day. It's what you do. It's not who you are. So you don't need to get too upset and take it too personally.
Very good. Just go back a little bit to Notts. What one or two little highlights or memorable moments. I think you came off the bench, but you would have been part of that game against, and you mentioned Mourinho, Chelsea, League Cup. They played, I think, most of their first team, and it was a big opportunity for Notts to get a bit of money in for the administrator. And of course, it went pretty close. What do you remember of that night?
Disappointed because I was on the bench.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Ranieri, I think, was managing at the time.
Was it? Sorry.
Not Mourinho.
My stats man again, no good. Get another one.
Yeah. Honestly, after this, it's his last one. This. I think they had Veron playing. I remember Veron being untouchable. Couldn't get the ball off him. Absolutely frightening. Never gave the ball away. I think it was Grosjean on one wing. I remember being on the bench because when I was warming up, Joe Cole was on the bench as well, and Joe was in the year below me at Lillishall. So I knew Joe to chat to, and we were warming up together and stuff. And the thing I remember, I mean, it was a really good game. We gave him a bit of a fright. We came back into it. It was a real proper game of football, and we did ourselves proud on the night. But we were told by the administrators that we weren't allowed to swap shirts.
I knew I was going to ask you about this. Go on. Yeah.
So we weren't allowed to swap shirts. Now, we weren't getting any bonuses for getting where we'd got because of the administration. We weren't getting anything extra from playing in front of a big crowd. There was none of that. The players were fuming, absolutely fuming that we weren't allowed to keep our shirts because they were going to auction them off to make more money for what was going on. And the players generally felt that the least we could do is get a shirt from a game like this and how big a thing it was. We weren't going to play against Chelsea very often. It was an opportunity to swap shirts and have that memento from your time. And to be fair to Billy did, and he came in, he went, look, lads, and he was kind of sat with his head down. He went, I'm so sorry, you're not allowed to swap shirts at the end of the game. He said, that's the official line. But if you can swap shirts, you go for it. And we finished the game, and a few of the lads went up to their players and went, can we swap shirts? As it happens, Chelsea had been told that they couldn't swap shirts with us because they had to keep their shirts to be auctioned off. Now, I knew Joe Cole. So I said to Joe, we swapped shirts at the end of the game. He went, yeah, don't worry about it, no problem. So he came and gave me a shirt at the end of the game, and then he went, give me yours. I went, you don't need mine. You're not going to have mine up in your living room, are you? And he went, no, come on. He said, I'll take your shirt. I went, all right, I'll give him my shirt. So I took Joe Cole's, which I've still got now. He took mine, which I'm pretty sure he's probably used as a duster. And I came in the following week, and I got called into the manager's office. And he sat there and he went, Kev, we know that you've swapped shirts and you're going to have to pay for the one that you've given away. So I had to pay 26 quid for the shirt. I think it was around 25, 26 quid for the shirt. And I had to pay 50p per letter and per number that was on the back of the shirt as well. And I've got quite a long name. I think it was the longest in the team at the time. So I had to pay 50p per letter in Nicholson and 50p for, I think I was number 11 at that point. And I had to pay all over. And again, he was really apologetic, but he'd been told I had to do it. And then it sounds like I'm making it up, but my brother, I've told him, my brother's always been my biggest fan. He's followed me everywhere. He's always come to watch my games. He's always been massively into everything that I've done. And the one thing that he always did, which I told him not to, was he went on fans forums. And the beauty of fans forums is it's a great place for fans to mingle and meet and chat and so on. The horror of fans forums is that they will say how they feel no matter what. And for a player, when things are going well, it's great. But, you know, in my early years, I used to go on it now and then, and you'd see like, oh, what a great game Nicholson had today. What a player, great signing, fantastic. What a left foot. And you think this is brilliant. And then on a bad day, oh, wow. I learned really quite quickly not to read those things. And I told my brother not to, but he didn't really, he just couldn't help himself. And he went on, and there was a story on there about how I had stolen Joe Cole's shirt. And apparently it wasn't the first time, because I'd stolen Stuart Pearce's shirt from a game at Wembley when we were there as England schoolboys, which we weren't. There was no such game. But apparently I'd been in the changing rooms and stolen Stuart Pearce's shirt. And that I had ties with a Nottingham gangster of the street named the White Bear, which I generally thought was like that my brother was huge. So I was pretty sure that he'd be the White Bear. And yeah, these things went around on the internet, and I actually got booed. The next home game I went on, and I got booed by a section of the crowd, and I couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't believe I was getting booed for something as ridiculous as that. But they read my name out like they do, number 11, Kev Nicholson, and I used to have a very simple Nicholson type chant when I was in the book, and there was a section that booed me. So it's incredible how these things can kind of flow through and get to the fans, and they hear it and they'll believe it. And that was where it was. But no, I took Joe Cole's shirt because he gave it me and I asked for it. It was perfectly okay to do by the manager, but the administrators had managed to get no one else to swap shirts. And I paid the £26 plus 50p a letter for the privilege.
I've got to say, it's either 14 or 15 podcasts we've done, that is probably one of the best stories I've heard. And it's all about what we're about. You know, clearly you couldn't really tell that story very much at the time as a novice.
No, I've not told it to many.
Fans watching this will be absolutely, it's hilarious.
If you booed me, if you were one of those fans that booed me, shame on you. Absolute shame.
What a story. What a story. I hesitate to bring it up, but I've no idea whether it brings a response from you or not, because we do this live and we don't pre-prepare anything. Now, I think an FA Cup game, were you involved when we got knocked out 4-2 by non-league Southport?
I've got a really good memory for the games that I played in.
Danny Allsop got both, but we lost 4-2.
In that case, if Danny Allsop got them, yes, because he left at the same time as I left. So I would have been. I must have conveniently blanked that one out because I don't remember that one.
Okay, we may just cut that one, edit that one out. I know it was, in terms of Notts' history, that was kind of one of the worst, as you can imagine, conceding 4 goals to a non-league club. But anyway.
Yeah. There's a website called Soccer Base. If you type in Kevin Nicholson Soccer Base, my name will come up along with anybody else that's played in the league, and it's absolutely brilliant. So tell your really shoddy guy next to you, if he goes on there, you can get the team sheets from every game that person played in. Don't take into account like the LDV vans as it was back in then. So I actually played 110 games for Notts, so he knows. I was always really big on keeping these numbers, so I was quite proud of the games that I played, and so I played 110 games, but they don't get noted on things like Wikipedia when you play in like the Football League Trophy type games. But that website, if you go on there, so you'll be able to see the team sheet for Notts County against Chelsea. So you'll see all the players that played. I've been on it before. Sometimes if I'm messing about and getting nostalgic, I'll go and have a look because you forget about some of the players you played against.
Yeah, I mean, players you played with. give us, I mean, and you're clearly a great raconteur. I mean, I don't know how you follow the Joe Cole shirt story. Give us some stories about some of the other lads in the Notts dressing room while you were there.
So, like Michael Brough, they used to call him Dave, as in, and it made no sense. So they used to call him Dave, like Trigger, and on Only Fools and Horses. Yeah. So they used to call him Dave, which it should have been Trigger, but Dave stuck. And he was really, really intelligent, but really, really daft. Now he's gone on now. He's got his own business. He had to retire early because of a knee injury, and he's up in Manchester now, and he's got a really successful recruitment business, and he's done brilliantly. And I played with him at Notts, and I played with him at Forest Green, and then he actually came to Torquay when I was there, and he lived with me for 6 months. So I've had a long kind of career journey with Broughy. But the one that stands out, and I wasn't actually there, but the one that stands out is they were going on a lad's holiday after the season. I did mention that wasn't my thing, so I stayed clear of all that. But on the plane, his ears kept popping, and the lad said to him, "Look, just what you need to do is hold your nose and blow." So he went. That's how daft that guy was. He was ridiculous, and yet he's now a successful businessman doing his thing. There were no end of stories about, like, we had Askey, who was from that era, like the Gaza era, really, work hard, play hard. So, you know, he didn't shirk training. He worked hard in training. He worked hard in the games as best as he could, but he partied hard. And there were many, many times when he recruited one or two lads and they came in the next day a little bit worse for wear. I'm not sure if he was better training when he was drunk or not, but he was certainly a fantastic player. And again, I've not seen him for a few years now, but he went and he was assistant at Gateshead for a little while. He actually went with Gary Mills. He was his assistant to a few places at Gateshead and at York. But he was a top guy. Loads of stories from a few of them that are definitely not clean enough to tell you.
Goal scorers, because I mean, not all the time you were there. You know, sometimes a club can struggle because they don't score, but you know, a combination of Allsop, Stallard, and I think I'm not sure whether Heffernan would have got a load once.
Hef was just coming through.
Quality goal scorers.
Yeah, no, Hef was just coming through. You know, he was brilliant. Stall, you know, he was an old school back to goal kind of striker with like fantastic technique. You know, like he scored some great goals.
Was he intelligent in them days? Because he commentates on Radio Nottingham.
Very, yeah. He's you know, he speaks well. Again, he's another one that I used to play snooker with him every Friday before. That was our thing, that we'd finish training, we'd go and have a game of snooker in Nottingham. And I've kept that up with him since. So we play as often as we can. I mean, since I've been down in Torquay, and he's, I think the last time I played golf with him was the summer before last. But it was golf in the summer. And snooker in the winter, and we had some, we carry on having big battles, and you just like big kids. It's that competitive thing again.
Yeah.
Not in the dressing room anymore, but whenever we play each other, you don't just want to beat each other, you want to humiliate each other, and then you want to drop each other text messages for the next 3 weeks saying what's it like to be such a massive loser. And you just like, it's like being a big kid. But he's a great guy, really well spoken. I can imagine he's probably pretty good on commentary.
He's very good, to be fair. Very good.
Yeah. I've got in my garage or in my loft somewhere, I've seen just behind your head now, there's what looks like a calendar. And
it's an award-winning book.
Is it a book? Right.
What I wrote.
Oh, right. Oh, well, there you go then. I apologise. But yeah, we did a calendar. It was one of the most cringeworthy things I've ever been a part of. And I've actually got one in my loft somewhere, where they made 4 of us pose topless. It was raising money. It's a Christmas calendar raising money for the club, and they made 4 of us pose topless. And oh wow, it's horrendous. If there's anybody out there that's still got a copy, then please burn it. I believe I've probably got the only copy in existence, and at some point my wife will stitch me up, I've no doubt, because if it gets out there, I'm getting battered. But
were you one of the 4 that were topless?
I was. Stall was as well, and Stall, bless him, was never overly aesthetic when it came to stuff like that. So just a big glaring chest rug, and they stitched us up. You do things as footballers where the cameraman comes in, he says, "I've got a great idea. Will you do this?" And you don't think twice. until years down the line when you look back and think, what the hell was I thinking when I allowed them to do this? I think Caskey's got one where he's pulling a pint. I mean, he's living up to his stereotype. I mean, the whole thing is just a horror show of photographs, black and white as well. They tried to make it a bit moody. I mean, it was, I'll try and dig it out. I'll dig it out and shame myself at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Top man. What was Barra like, Ian Barraclough?
Pretty sensible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any stories of any kind of naughty note or anything.
He's Mr. Smooth on the golf course, because he was born in Leicester, so I was at Leicester City around there. So I used to give him free tickets for Leicester games and things.
Okay, yeah.
And I think we played golf at something like that, and he was always very dapper on the golf course. Had the best gear and.
He's sophisticated, yeah. He was always suave. He actually got a hole in one. We used to play. We used to have before administration kicked in. They actually had a membership at one of the golf courses up in Nottingham that had two courses, A course, A and B, and C and D course, they call it.
I think that'd probably been the Nottinghamshire Golf and Country Club. Cotgrave Place, maybe, when you...
Cotgrave. It was Cotgrave. Yeah. So we had a membership there, and I was playing in his group, and he got a hole in one there. He was a good player, good golfer.
How long was the par 3 then?
It was it's the 9th or the 10th, right next to the clubhouse, going down the hill, and he nailed a par 3 there, hole in one bouncing in. So he was obviously happy boy after that. Gary Hours was the big golfer. Gary Hours was the one that Gary Hours is one of the most power guys you'll ever come across. He's miserable. If he's not miserable, he's not happy. But he on a golf course was like a little kid again. He loved it. Thrived on golf, and he dragged us all in. So we ended up with quite a strong golf school that we used to go down there on a Tuesday after train, and then maybe a Wednesday on your day off and have a round. And he absolutely loved it. And he was a proper player as well. Really good golfer.
Was his partner or girlfriend British ice skating freestyle champion?
Oh, you've got me there. You could convince me. You could convince me either way. I didn't know him that well. But no, I mean, he actually, I see him around and about a fair bit. He actually took over from me as Torquay manager. So I speak to him and see him every now and then. But yeah, he's not the most overly outgoing, happy character unless you get him on a golf course, at which point he absolutely thrives on it. But yeah, and then there were just times that there were, although it was really, really hard in the administration, there were just a lot of good people there, a lot of genuine people. Of all the clubs that I played for, that I've already told Bruffy, Stall, Nick Fenton, guys that I'm still in touch with now. And in football, that's rare. At the time when you're at a club, you feel like it's almost your family. These are the guys. These are the people that I spend my life with. These are my best friends. All that kind of stuff. You leave the club, and it's amazing how few you keep in contact with, because life just goes on, and the next teammate comes in and becomes part of it, and you then family come about, and your wife and your kids and all that kind of stuff. So you lose contact with so many. And Stal said to me, I said to Stal in the dressing room once, we've got a really great team spirit here. We've got some real good lads. And he went, mate, friends in football are like ships in the night. And that's another one of those things that it was a throwaway comment that stuck with me throughout. And I still mention it to him now, because it genuinely almost upset me at the time, because I thought, no, I'm going to be mates with these guys forever. And there's 3 or 4 of them now that I speak to, which is really quite a high percentage from your football clubs. But yeah, Sal, he's a top guy. But that comment was like, oh, that's a little bit too real, I think, that one.
Okay, I mean, brilliant insight and recollections. Clearly, there's a focus on Notts County, but we want to open things out as generally as we can. And I've probably got this one wrong as well from my stats man. Over 300 appearances. You had player, manager at Torquay. And I think they called you, is it the Ranieri of the Riviera?
I did get that one, yeah. I think the author of that was, I think, Paul Breen, his name was. First of all, your stats man is selling me short again. So I played 350 games for Torquay. And I think I fell just short of 700 total. So he's killing me on the old stats.
Just short of 7 a career. That is a lot of games.
You know what? athletically not good enough. I wasn't quick enough. I wasn't really strong enough. I definitely wasn't aggressive enough, but I was always available. And because I could take decent set plays and my left foot would deliver without having to run too far, I was selectable and I was durable. And so I was fortunate I never got injured. So that side of it was always a fortunate thing. But yeah, and I played until 18 months ago. So I played professionally for 20 years. So I was really, really lucky like that. And the fact that I can still walk in a straight line and I've not got a limp is very fortunate as well. That might come further down the line, but I'm grateful for where it's at the moment. But yeah, the Ranieri of the Riviera was the season that Leicester had won the Premier League. We pulled off. I actually stole from Notts on this. We pulled off a great escape. I don't know if you remember the year I scored the winning goal against Huddersfield when we stayed up, and it was a great escape. And we made up posters. There were posters went out of ripped off of the Great Escape film, and I suggested this at Torquay because we went into February at the bottom of the league, 12 points adrift, and bookies had finished paying out on us. We were down. We were like completely done. And from February through to the end of the season, we were top of the league, and we stayed up with 2 games to go. And as that momentum started to build, I've suggested, look, we did this at Notts. We did this great escape thing. They used to play the theme tune on the tannoys, and it became a real thing. Like the lads were proud of it. The lads were a part of it. You wanted this. Like it became, everybody bought into it. The fans bought into it. The players were in it. I suggested the same thing at Torquay, and they made up the posters. The guy put together a really good poster, superimposed my head onto Steve McQueen's body, all that kind of stuff. And we pulled off the same thing. If not, I mean, at Notts, if I remember at Notts, I think we won something like 8 out of the last 13 to stay up that season. And we did come back from being kind of dead and buried, but at Torquay, we really were dead and buried. We were gone. And we just kept on winning, and we kept on that momentum, and we kept on the belief. And when we stayed up, this guy came down. One of our last games of that season, we played at Guiseley, and we were just stayed up the game before, or 2 games before, we'd confirmed safety. And he came and interviewed me, and he put this really nice piece together just about, the same kind of odds of Leicester winning the Premier League was what we pulled off in staying up. And it was nice, those kind of things are always quite nice to look back on, and I've got a copy of it somewhere, and it was nice little piece, really.
If we could, because it was a seminal game, and we perhaps just we'll edit and dive around a bit. So that game, Huddersfield, with that goal, what was the run-up like to that? What was it at stake? It was a fantastic run-in. Going into that last game against Huddersfield, do you think you could do it that day?
Yeah, we knew we were doing it. It wasn't in doubt. We absolutely knew that was going to get done. Like you just had that feeling. There was nerves. I was quite nervous before every game I played. That was just my thing. I used to get I couldn't eat before games sometimes. I used to get really worked up. No matter how many games I played, every single one. I saw it as a strength. I saw it as, it was me wanting to do well, and this was just my engine starting and I was getting ready to go. But it was uncomfortable. I had that probably a little bit more than usual, but mentally, I certainly, and I know speaking to the guys, we knew we were winning that game, and that was about 15,000 people.
There's a massive atmosphere, big contingent from Huddersfield.
My favourite, one of my favourite 1 or 2 pictures in football is the picture when I just scored and I'm running away with my arm in the air, and it's an in focus picture of me, and in the background there's an out of focus fans just on the way up to cheer. And I came across, my in-laws have got a video of the goal, so I've got it on my phone now, where they saved the DVD, and like I took a video of the thing going through, and it was just one of those games where you knew it was going to go your way, you knew you were going to do well. I think we went 1 up, and then I got the ball just in my own half, and to be honest, didn't really do anything. I set off running, and then everybody made these runs which took the defenders away. So I didn't go past anybody. In fact, I was being chased by somebody. And I think even my wife, when she saw the goal, said, "Oh, wow, how did he not catch you? You're not very quick." And it was about right. He just nearly got there. And in my head, again, I'd love to say that I hit it and it flew in the bottom corner and it never touched the floor. Like it bounced in. I mean, I'm not quite sure how it beat the goalkeeper, but it parted. I got to the edge of the box. I was knackered at that point, so I had to shoot because I wasn't going to do anything else. And it went in that bottom corner. And just even now when I say it, hairs on the back of the neck, kind of like wow feeling. And I get a call every now and then from someone like Robin Chipperfield, who, you know, like if Notts are ever struggling at the bottom of the league, I'll get a call about the Great Escape thing. It's like the go-to one. Shame I can't talk about the big promotions and all the rest of it, but at least I'm remembered, I suppose. And yeah, it was just an immense feeling. And they got one back, and it ended up 2-1. And I think Bournemouth lost at Wrexham, or Wrexham lost against Bournemouth, or one way or the other. So we probably would have stayed up even with the draw.
But you didn't know that.
It was you know, pitch invasion at the end. I believe there was quite a few Notts Forest fans in there wanting to see us get relegated. You know, it was just that everybody was in there, and it was just an incredible atmosphere. And that pitch is one that stays with me. And yeah, just amazing. And classic football, you go away, you've actually, when you look back on it, you've had a horrible season. You've lost loads of games. It was probably the year we got knocked out in the FA Cup. You know, like it was that kind of season where everything went against us. But then the last 2 months, you've just found a rhythm, you've found momentum, you've found a way of winning, and you see the season out and you stay up. And every Notts player, every Notts fan would have gone away thinking that they'd won the lottery. And it was actually at the end of a horrible, horrible season. But that's almost the irony of football, is that after 8 months of horror, 1 month of decent stuff can actually send you away feeling really good about it. You know, my first season at Torquay was one of the best seasons in my life. I played really well. The team were magnificent. The fans were right behind it. They'd just come off a relegation into the National League, which was the first time in their history. We were on the way back up again, and we beat everybody. We were absolutely flying. And then last 2 weeks of the season, we got knocked out of the playoffs by Exeter when we were 3-1 up on aggregate with 20 minutes to go in the second leg. And they scored 3 in 20 minutes. And then the following week, we'd got to the cup final, which shows you what a good season it was at Wembley. And we went to Wembley and we got beat by Ebbsfleet in the cup final. And I went away for that summer absolutely depressed. Yeah, I'd spent 9 months of some of the best football and the best goal scoring and the best atmospheres that you'd ever come across. It's a crazy game, football, really. But that Great Escape at Notts will always stay with me.
Now, I don't want to put any more pressure on my out of sorts stats man. Would you have been playing for Torquay on the day that Notts clinched the League Two Championship, 2008-9? Last game of the season, sunny day. It was a 0-0 draw.
Yes, I played him.
I thought you were, but I didn't want to say it in case you got it wrong again.
Yeah, he's having a bad day, isn't he? I don't want to put any more pressure on him. But no, yeah, I remember the one I remember most was we drew 2-2 at Meadow Lane.
Was that a televised game?
Yeah.
I was in the boardroom. Was Colin Lee involved with Torquay at that point?
Yeah, he was like CEO. He kind of helped out on a few bits like that.
I was in the boardroom and I knew Colin from when he was at Leicester with Mark McGee. Yeah. And Ian McParland did an interview after the game on the telly. And he's kind of given it the one, you know, we should be battering teams like Torquay, blah, 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 blah. And Colin Lee is like fuming in the, I'm going to go down and see him because Charlie has a short fuse. And while Colin's quite regal, you wouldn't want to upset him, would you, too much, Colin?
No, he's a good guy, Colin. We always kind of talked about him as Dracula in the background. He had that way about him, didn't he? Like a Christopher Lee type Dracula character.
Very good, very good.
Yeah. So that was the players. If you asked about Colin Lee and you're in the dressing room, that's what we would always refer back to. But he was a really, really good guy. He's still down in Torquay now, bump into him now and then. But yeah, I remember that game, and the 0-0 that year. I'd been frozen out the team completely at the end of that year, so it looked like I was being released by Torquay. I'd spent 3 months not anywhere near the squad. They'd brought in about 5 different left backs, and they'd not quite worked out. And then he was kind of forced to put me back in, and I got in with about 7 games to go, and we beat, I think it was Shrewsbury 2-1, and I set 2 up from corners, and then we didn't concede a goal for the last 6 games. And that would have been the 0-0 at the end of the season. We set the record for time spent not conceding. So 6 games at the end of that season, then another 4 going into the following season. So it was a good time for us because we kind of We didn't hit the ground running in League Two. When I was at Torquay, we struggled. That difference between National League and League Two, you don't think it's that big, but actually you know about it when you're playing in it. And we didn't really get going. And a lot of the old school, the old guard that was up, were kind of got rid of, and new players came in, and it didn't quite work. And then right at the end of the season, we just found our feet. And then the following year, we got to the playoff final. So we just kind of carried on that momentum at that time.
I mean, it seems, as we speak now, Torquay play Notts County. It's the National League. I mean, could you envisage that 20 years ago?
No, it's scary, really. It really is. I keep track of all the teams I used to play for. I always follow them. So I follow them on Twitter, and I look out for their results and keep an eye on how they're going on. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I think Notts have had a real up and down, haven't they? 1 minute they've got Sol Campbell and Kasper Schmeichel, and the next minute you're in the National League, and it's a bit scary, really. But yeah, I haven't managed to go back and watch a game. I've played, obviously, against Notts, but I've never got back to watch a game yet. So I'll plan on doing that when I can, and then no doubt I'll get asked to do the radio when Notts play at Torquay, because I go back and do that now and then.
Moving from Torquay to Exeter, that's quite an interesting move, because down there, there's probably a bit of rivalry between those two, isn't there?
There is. I mean, I didn't go straight there. I got sacked as Torquay manager in 2017, and then I had a year where I was doing some scouting at Man City, which was quite nice. And then I was actually player, manager, coach, academy director at a club called Mousel down in Cornwall.
Yeah.
They, big idea, little club, big ideas. They were going to grow the academy, grow the first team, get up the leagues, and so on. And it was a really, really nice club, full of really good people. Small club, not many people. Average gates like 150, but really, really good place to play. And I had a year or a season there, and then this opportunity came about. So it's a bit different. Head of coaching is very much a development role. You're developing the coaches, so you're helping coach the coaches and develop the coaches. You're helping develop the players as well. You haven't got anywhere near the pressure of first team football. I find it quite strange. I've spent 20 odd years being in a position where you needed quick feedback. Over the weekend, 3 points, right, I've done a good job. The weekend, I've not been sacked, right, I've done all right. All of a sudden now, it's very slow. It's very much a case of building relationships in the trust of the coaches and understanding them so that you can help them develop, because there's no point in going in and saying you need to do this, this and this, because for the most part, people will just go, who are you, get lost. So it's a real opportunity to, like a football education. I've learned a lot in football through playing, through managing, through coaching. What I'm doing now is probably learning how people think, learning how I think, a lot of real deep, reflective type stuff. And my overall goal will be to get back into first team management when the time's right. But this is an opportunity to learn stuff that you don't necessarily get to when you're a first team manager, because it's almost week by week. I want my project, when it's right, to be something that is like Exeter City. Exeter City are the best run football club I've ever come across. Their academy, everything from, who is now the president, he was the chairman, but the president, the club board, to the trust board, to the football in the community, to the first team, to the academy, everybody understands who's doing what and why they're doing it. So you see how many young players they bring through, and we bring through into the first team. It's because the first team manager knows that if he can bring those players in, the academy, the club can make money from selling players. His budget can be better spent because it's cheaper to have a homegrown player than it is to have to bring somebody down from Nottingham, for instance. It allows the academy to continue to grow and produce these players. The fan base are understanding that that's part of what we do, so the manager's not under the immediate pressure that some would be for playing younger players. It's the most, I suppose, single-minded, well-driven football club that I've come across, and it's a model that it's brave, because everybody from the chairman through to the fans have got to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and give the people time to get it in place, because everything takes time when it comes to developing and building something, and you're in an industry where nobody gets time. So it's been a very, very brave thing that Exeter have done over a long period of time. and it's a pleasure to be a part of. So hopefully I'll have a few more years here, and I'll contribute and I'll help with that journey, and then I'll be looking at what comes next. But right now it's a really good place to be.
Is it still a trust-owned model at Exeter?
It is, yeah. So again, they've got to be really on board and knowledgeable about how it works and what's going on. So it's a bit different, and yeah, very well done.
I think it's a very interesting model, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite, because I am not a fan normally of the trust model. I think trust models can work up to semi-professional level. I think at professional level, it's very difficult because of the sums of money that are involved, and you have to, things go wrong, you don't play a home game for 3 weeks, where's the money coming from, type of thing. But when I went down to Exeter and I was speaking to them, they do seem to have set it up extremely well. And I guess a lot of people thought Exeter will do well for as long as Paul Tisdale is there. But the moment Paul Tisdale goes, it'll all fold like a pack of cards. But it didn't, and I thought that would. I thought they've done
that shows you
really well.
Yeah, that shows you. I mean, Tisdale was brilliant. Really good guy, excellent manager, real forward-thinking person. I spoke to Tiz a fair bit when I was managing at Torquay. He was really, really happy to give a bit of time up and help a young manager who was trying to find his way. He was supportive. So was Julian Tagg, who's now the president, who was the chairman at the time. Again, I had messages off him after games, keep on going. If anything I can do to help, let me know. I mean, that's when you were the Torquay manager. So people like that, I think they understood that I was trying my best in a tough situation, that I was doing a lot of good stuff. Some of the good stuff wouldn't necessarily be noticed by those that didn't understand football. And he was really, really supportive, and Tisdale was brilliant. But the fact is that the way the club is run, no single person is bigger than it. So Tisdale moves on, that doesn't change the model. The next person coming through is somebody that's been in that succession planning for a little while. So they'll have in mind who the next manager is going to be even now, while Matt Taylor comes in and takes over the reins and hits the ground running, continues with the same ethos, continues, he's got his own ideas, and he's put them forward really well, as you can see with the success of the first team. But it's all within the structure of what Exeter City is. So he still gives young players a chance. He still is brave enough to put them in his first team when results matter. He continues in that same vein as what Tisdale did, but with his own slight tweak on things. Yeah. And the next person through, I'm sure, will do the same. But these guys get given chance. It's a great model for so many clubs if you're willing to be brave enough to allow someone chance to fail and stick with them and learn from those mistakes. And very, very few people in football are. It'll be interesting who the next one is to really go with it, and what success they get.
It's been great chatting. Very, very illuminating. Very, very interesting. Mix of the, best story so far on the podcast, without a doubt. The Joe Cole show, absolutely brilliant. I love the sort of the analysis of Huddersfield and the goal, brilliant. Bit of the serious stuff there with Exeter, and I look at how Exeter are doing things. Hats off to them. And I think one of the challenges we've probably had at Notts, certainly for it's not recent, but for probably a decade or more, is we talk about pathways a lot, don't we? And Notts have not brought through many young players from what historically has traditionally been a very, very successful youth scheme and breeding ground. And I think that is one of our challenges. And as you said, what tends to happen is you bring in the 32-year-old player on a 1-year contract who ends up playing 8 or 9 games. He's probably on 4 times what a young kid would be. Now, the argument against that is that there's no point bringing kids in if they're not good enough. But it's a fine dividing line. And I've kind of asked a few of the guys this. I mean, where would you be if I'm not sure whether Colchester did this for a while. They more or less insisted that a certain number of the young players or home produced players had to be in a squad of 16 or 17 most weeks.
Yeah, with anything like that, it has to be all the way through the club. If a manager comes in and gets told he has to put so many players in, that immediately puts that manager in a position where he isn't doing what he really believes he really wants to do. If that manager is part of that decision-making process, i.e. Paul Tisdale and Matt Taylor down here, so he understands why and is a believer in why, and therefore brings those players in and plays them, then it doesn't matter how you dress the model, whether you have to have so many players in there or whether you're just doing it because you know it makes perfect sense for the longevity of a football club and continue to produce young players. Like what you said there about, not putting them in if they're not good enough. Very few 18-year-olds are good enough to play 40 games a season in the National League or League Two or any other league. But if you put them in and give them a chance and allow them to learn and allow them to fail and then take them out and manage them, and you've only got to look at Alex Ferguson, how he used to deal with his young players. If you give them the chance to do that, then just because they're not good enough now won't mean that they're not good enough in the future. And the knack is in the recruitment and seeing the potential within those players, put them out there and let them grow. And that, again, is a brave thing to do, because the fact is, for any club that isn't Man City, Man U, Liverpool, most of your young players are going to be deemed not good enough in one area or another. And the only way they're going to become good enough is if you give them the opportunity to do that. And there lies the issue, is that in a game where 2 or 3 bad results, you could get sacked. It has to be a club effort. It has to be the whole football club understanding why you're doing what you're doing and then going for it. And that does takes bravery, it takes understanding, it takes openness with the fans. The fans have to know why you're doing something. Otherwise, it just starts rumours on forums, and then players start getting booed. So you never know what's going on. But it's something that's to be discussed. It's something that can be done, has been shown to be done, and that's something that I'll be a part of one day again, I'm sure. So
I'm sure you will. Final question. Sometimes I forget to ask it. You've got to pick your best 6-a-side team from the players that you played with at Notts County. So, goalkeeper, I don't know, 2 defenders, 1 midfielder, 2 attackers. So your 6-a-side team can't include yourself, from the players you played with at Notts County.
Oh, I've not got picked. Wardy in goal.
Yeah. Defenders.
Nick Fenton. And I'll go with Rico. Rico was a terrible 6-a-side player. Like, I'm picking him because of his 11-a-side ability, not because he could barely string a pass together in a 6-a-side. He just wanted to head it and kick people. But I'll go with Rico for nostalgia.
Yeah.
Kasky was a very good 6-a-side player because he didn't have to run, so he definitely gets the nod for results-based decision, that one.
You're going to have to leave one of the big strikers out here that scored 20 a season, aren't you?
I'm not. I'm going to have to go with Stahl and Danny Allsop. You can't break them up. Hef was a young lad coming through at the time, so Hef went on to do really, really well and was a really, really good player. But on the off chance that Danny Allsop or Stahl come across this, I couldn't not pick them. I mean, again, Danny Allsop, not a 6-a-side player. He needs open room to go and be powerful and do what he needs to do. I mean, he was an absolute monster physically. But ball in a tight area at his feet, I'm not sure that's his strength. Stahl would be a really good 6-a-side player. He wouldn't have to run, and running was by far his weakest area. So, with Stahl and Kasky in there, I'm hoping it's quite a small 6-a-side pitch that we're playing on. And with Rico, that 6-a-side team's winning nothing, by the way. It's got 3 angry men that want to kick things and run around, and it's got 2 technicians and a goalkeeper that's going to be way overworked. So it's a horrible 6-a-side team, but some good players in it.
And manager, presumably Gary Mills.
Gary doesn't quite get that nod. I really enjoyed working with Jockey Scott. He was, one of those old school guys, like I say, never held a grudge. I could go and see him ask him why the hell I wasn't playing. He'd tell me to my face, and then that'd be it. You'd be off, and you'd be at it again. But I'd have to go with Billy Dearden. I had my best times at not playing for Billy. As a man management goes, he was fantastic, but he owes me about £28.50 for that shirt. So.
Kevin, an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure if this is anything to go by, it will not be long before you're back in the manager's chair, as and when you deem the right project and the right time to move back into it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for your time, Paul. Really appreciate it.